Broadcasting at 2 p.m. from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing weeknights at 8 p.m. on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome to the Gailey Show. You can also watch us right now on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thegailey-show. Welcome. I'm your host, John Parker. It is Friday, which means culture and entertainment, and not just that. It is New Novel Friday. So what is on the show today? In the second half of our program, Mac Crane's A Sharp Endless Need came out 2 days ago. It's serving sapphic high school women's basketball romance. But up first, Blair Fell's newest novel, Disco Witches of Fire Island, just came out on May 6th. Blair's television work includes Queer as Folk and the Emmy Award-winning California Connected. He's written dozens of plays, including the award-winning plays Naked Will, The Tragic and Horrible Life of the Singing Nun, and the downtown cult miniseries Burning Habits. He is a two-time winner of the prestigious Doris Littman Prize in Creative Writing from the City College of New York. And concurrently with being a writer, Blair has been an American Sign Language interpreter since 1993. Plus, recently, we featured Blair on an episode of This Queer Book Saved My Life, where he discussed the life-saving impacts of The Persian Boy by Mary Renaud. We talked about queer books, in particular, obviously, The Persian Boy, and how they elevate our own expectations of ourselves and move us to honor ourselves by saying we deserve something more, and we deserve more Blair Fell. So, hey, Blair, welcome to The Gailey Show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you again and to be in conversation. So, Disco Witches of Fire Island is an LGBTQ plus fantasy romance featuring a coven of witches on Fire Island?
Well, yes. Yes, it does, actually. It does.
Oversimplified description of it.
Well, I mean, it's actually based a lot in truth, despite being a romantasy. It takes a lot from my own life. What happened was my first partner, I came of age in the 80s. I never, took a breath at first, a gay breath, without knowing about AIDS. And my first partner was HIV positive and I'm negative. And when I was 24, I met him, and he ended up dumping me, and then he died. And that's what kind of led me on a journey that I eventually became a writer. He died a couple of years after we broke up. And why I'm saying this is right after that, when I decided to become a writer after learning of his death, I went to Fire Island sight unseen, moved into the attic of these three older gay men who would play 70s disco all day long. The alpha gay guy who cleaned houses for a living out there would build giant hats with lights and feathers and rhinestones and go out dancing at 4 a.m. and they'd cook ketamine on the stove. And so they just kind of evolved into my head into these disco witches or witches. And then I kind of, decades later came up with the idea I worked on something smaller with the idea back in the 90s, but then when I was deciding what my second book would be, I'm like, I didn't know I could write novels back then. And like now it turns out I can write novels, it seems. So I thought I'd approach the subject again. And that was the beginning of this novel, was to kind of like, that's the setup. And what does he learn from these older disco witches? What is his arc about coming to terms with the loss of his lover, but how does he fall in love again? And really what I wanted to do with this book was to kind of let, younger generations of gay men, gay and bi and queer and all the other permutations of gay men, know what it was like back then to be trying to fall in love when everyone around you seemed to be dying. To fall in love meant, am I going to get infected? Are they going to die on me and leave me alone? And that was, the drumbeat of my head the entire time during that period. Remember, back then, there was no medicine. If you had HIV, it was assumed you would die. Mm-hmm. And so, I fell in love with this guy about 2 months after meeting him. And this is the real life story. His name was Brian. He's we were just friends at first because he was so beautiful and so charming. I thought, no one like this could ever love me. And, it ended up being he liked me too. And then it was just a couple weeks after that he told me that he was positive. And, it just like devastated me, but I was massively in love with him and never stopped loving him really. But I could not handle it. And I kind of went, you know, bonkers crazy, like, because all I wanted to do was talk about it and try to solve it. And, he didn't want to talk about it because there was no cure. There was no hope. There was no medicine.
Mhm.
Um, and certainly, I don't want to give too much away of the novel, but part of my journey and the journey of Joe Agabian, who's the main character, is going from victim of this to actor, to getting involved. For me, and for Joe to a certain extent, it's getting involved in Act Up, which is what I did to finally, I couldn't hold it in any longer, so I ended up getting involved with Act Up in around '89, right when it was really doing all this amazing work, which a lot is now under threat because of the current administration. But we did a lot of great work in, going down to Washington, protesting at the CDC and the FDA and all of the and NIH and doing a lot of radical good work. And I mean, I think that's a big message in the book is, the solution in this great darkness that we're living in today, which the great darkness is a big theme of the book, is, is taking action, love and resistance, I like to say.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much there that I want to get into. Particularly, I have a question around Act Up. But to rewind a little bit about the disco witches, what is the root of the magic here? Like, what is the function of the magic and the fantasy within the novel?
Well, I mean, there's two aspects of it as far as in relation to trying to pass on the feeling of what it was like back then, was,
Mm.
the loss of magic. I mean, when we meet the disco witches, we're meeting a coven that is totally broken down. The high priest Max is, on death's door. There's only four remaining alive disco witches on the island, and they need a quorum of five to be able to do their magic, which is done on the dance floor. And this was very much about, the feeling of what it was to lose the magic, because queer people are so amazing and so filled with magic themselves. And this is what the loss of that magic and the yearning to have it back. The That was like one of the main kind of metaphors and ideas in there. But the fact that, the collective has magic in it. There are those miraculous things when we are in a communal space dancing that happen with us. And just to kind of, I think just kind of like to emphasize that we do have magic when we are together. We can make change. We can, create these amazing nights of dancing that like create love and friendship and bonds. And also magic is fun, like fuck it. But it's also, just to mention, it's not like, they have wands and they go poof and magic happens. It's again this collective magic. It's they can't make magic separately. They each have their own practices, like you know Lenny practices Italian kitchen magic. Howie sees auras. Max has his Guatemalan magic. Dory has the things that she does. Saint Norman has his things, but they all have something different, which isn't that really effective separately. But when they're together, there's individual magic increases, but also have this ability to create collective magic.
Love that. I love that. I was doing some research. Tell me about Stephen Gendon. You met him at Act Up.
Steven was a friend of mine from Act Up that I met like on a bus trip, going to protest George Bush or something in Act Up. And we became friends. And he's actually he's like the first person to ever give me really hard drugs too, and to introduce me to the black party. But beyond that, I'm sober now, by the way. Is he came to me at a certain point, in the 90s, to let me know that he wanted to create a religion based on what he experienced on the dance floor, and that these transformative, transcendent experiences of dancing with a group of friends, and what he just felt. He had, I believe, studied religion at Brown, and he just really felt that this was such a religious experience, and he was earnest in wanting to start a religion based on his experiences on the dance floor. And when I was working on this, I mean, many things came to impact, like the kind of covenant was, their dogma and their doctrines and stuff. But that was a big thing. I kind of wanted to honor that thought of, yeah, a spirituality based on the dance floor.
I love that. I love that. This is a big question. I do want to talk a little bit about ACT UP because it's a moment of history that I think would be really important to remember and also to just learn from of what they did, because so much of ACT UP was getting a government actually, let me rephrase that, to force a government who did not care about us to act on our behalf, whether they liked it or not. And so that's a huge question, though. And so I have to fit in a break here before we do that. We are talking with author Blair Fell, who published his new novel, Disco Witches of Fire Island. It came out just a week ago. I also have a question. You are part of the queer Armenian community, and there's some history about this novel, some history making that you did, whether you knew it or not. I'm going to share that also when we come back from the break. You can connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and at heartlandsignal.com. You can also follow us on Blue Sky. We are at thegaleyshow.org on Blue Sky, and be sure to sign up for the AM950 newsletter, because that keeps you up to date not only on our program, but all of the LGBTQ programs on AM 950. So quick break, more after this. You are listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. It is about 21 minutes after the hour. It is New Novel Friday. Blair Fell, whose newest novel, Disco Witches of Fire Island, just came out on May 6th. Blair's television work includes Queer as Folk and the Emmy Award-winning California Connected. He's a two-time winner of the prestigious Doris Littman Prize in Creative Writing from the City College of New York. Blair, we were just with Steven starting to talk a little bit about ACT UP, and I know this could be a huge conversation just on its own. From your perspective, what is something about what you recall from ACT UP that we could apply to the struggle and the fight that we're doing today?
There's a lot to that. I mean, again, going back to this idea of collective, we need to do this together. We have power when we do this together. One thing in the book Disco Witches I talk about is, that famous, quote and saying, "An army of lovers can't fail," which is what ACT UP was. We were an army of lovers. I mean, we would go to meetings, we'd be having sex in the kitchen of the community center, or at least I would. And we'd like be on these bus trips, and like just so many brilliant, creative, fantastic people. And we fought hard, and here's like one example that happened. So we went down to the NIH to confront Dr. Fauci and the other people in the room about why they had not yet acted on this expanded access program that the brainiacs and ACT UP had come up with, a way to get medications to people faster. And I remember being in that room, and there wasn't that many of us that went down that day. But I was really just a soldier. I wasn't one of the main people. I was on the media committee, but I was like terrified to speak because these guys were just brilliant, in ACT UP. And I remember Dr. Fauci, or maybe one of the other people, I think it was Dr. Fauci.
And for folks listening, yes, that Dr. Fauci.
Yes, that
Great in
Dr. Fauci.
COVID, terrible on the HIV and AIDS crisis. Please continue.
He was terrible, but then he actually became a hero. And when he's like kind of lambasted now, it's like, fuck you. He ended up being wonderful for the gay community eventually. But he was still the bad guy at this point. And I remember he or one of the other people was saying, like, look, I haven't even read this yet. And I screamed, well, read it. And then like everyone started screaming, read it, read it, read it. I don't know if that influenced them to read it, but it was like, that was the thing that we did. We went there, we were in their face, we showed them our passion right there, and it made a difference. I mean, I think some of the tactics will need to change now because we also need to be extremely social media savvy. And there's a group called Rise and Resist out of New York that deals with many of the issues that we're facing right now, on queer issues, on immigration issues. They go down and protest Tesla. But they're also getting very social media savvy because that's where most people get their news now. And that's where these protests need to happen. That's where we're going to be able to influence the public. And I think that's what we can learn from ACT UP. But the other thing is to make the movement fun and passionate.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. We're talking with author Blair Fell, who published his new novel, Disco Witches of Fire Island, just a week ago. Sorry, you've got me thinking about ACT UP right now and like everything we're doing. And there's just so much to do. It feels overwhelming right now. But I do want to tell you that your main character, Joe Agabian, is Armenian American, correct?
Correct.
And I don't mean to sound pompous to the listeners, but Armenian American, queer. I founded the Queer Armenian Library, and I'm, again, sounding pompous, but I'm pretty much the global expert on LGBTQ Armenian books. And as far as I'm aware, Blair, this is the first novel by a gay Armenian American man featuring a gay character. So we're not including YA, and we're not including Armenian writers who are native to Armenia. So I'm like 90% sure of that.
Wow, did not know that. That's cool.
So yeah, how did Joe's Armenian identity and culture come into the writing of the book?
Well, I mean, the main character, Joe Agabian, is based on me, and I'm Armenian American, so I guess it was just like, I'm just like gonna pull whatever I am, It's like, when you're writing a novel, you just, whatever's around you just throw in because you're like, oh, I don't want to have to think of something on my own, so I'll just pull from my own life. And it's also, there's a real sense of Joe of feeling like other in this Fire Island space. I was talking to someone the other day about that, and like, I'm like, this hairy chested, tan skinned guy. And back in the 80s, late 80s, that wasn't really, to me, it didn't feel like a popular thing to be, because back then, I think because of AIDS, a lot of guys were shaving, trying to look shiny and clean. And like, I was this like hairy chested, swarthy guy, in this little pristine, Fire Island place. I mean, it still was marketable, I guess, but it just was different. And Joe's sense of other, and I just wanted, because I grew up in a very, pink-faced, blonde, white area of Pennsylvania, and I always, I was called racist names of various sorts and felt very other because of that. And I just wanted Joe to have that too. I mean, he's me, but he's not me. I mean, I think I'm more difficult than Joe is, but as a person. But so I wanted to reflect that there, but also as the book was being made and as I was developing the mythology of the book, there was something, I'm not sure if it's still in the book, it may not be, but the witches. So Joe, what you've learned in the book, is one of these like chosen people. And what they mean by that is a holy lover. Holy lovers are queer people of any sort. A holy lover who comes from kind of historic tragedy, uh, and they have to have all these other qualities that the witches are looking at Joe like the main witch, Howie Fishbein, thinks Joe might be one of these chosen people, and the chosen people are also under threat by the great darkness, and it's their job, the disco witch's job, to protect these chosen people, but they're not sure if Joe is. But that was one of the qualities, was him coming from historic tragedy.
Thank you, Blair, for joining me today. This has been very special.
Thank you.
And you have some events coming up real quickly, because I have less than a minute here. You have an event coming up this Sunday in San Francisco?
Correct. At Fabulosa Books. It will be at 5 p.m. this Sunday. And then in July, I have July 5th, I'll be at the Ice Palace in Cherry Grove on Fire Island for a Fire Island, or Disco Witches of Fire Island tea dance. And I'll be signing books at the store there. And then also on July 14th at Bear Week in P-Town, I'll be doing a discussion and reading with Phil Jimenez, who's a pretty famous comic book artist, at East End Books.
Perfect.
And that's at 6.
We've included a link in the show notes and on our episode's webpage on am950radio.com for you to purchase your own copy. Connect with Blair at his website, Blair Fell, FELL.com. Got to fit in a break here. When we come back, Matt Crane's A Sharp Endless Need came out 2 days ago. We're going to talk with them all about it. Stay tuned. You are listening to The Gaily Show on AM950 and WCPT 820. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing weeknights at 8 p.m. on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I am your host, John Parker. It is about 33 minutes after the hour. We are continuing New Novel Friday. Matt Crane's newest novel, A Sharp Endless Need, came out this week. Mac was an American Short Fiction Merit Fellow and a Sewanee Writing Conference Fellow. Their work has appeared in the Prairie Schooner, Tri-Quarterly, and Lip Hub, to name a few. You can learn more about their debut novel and Lambda Award-winning novel, I Keep My Exoskeletons to Myself, on an episode of 7 Minutes in Book Heaven that I hosted. You can find that episode by going to thisqueerbook.com or finding it in the This Queer Book Save My Life podcast feed, everywhere you get your podcasts. But we are here today to talk about Mac's newest novel, A Sharp Endless Need. Mac, hello. It's so great to see you again. Welcome to The Gaily Show.
Hey, John. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So would it be fair to describe A Sharp Endless Need as serving sapphic high school women's basketball romance?
Sort of, yeah. I've seen it described as, there's like a few genre like things I can talk about here. I've seen it described as sapphic, which is like not incorrect in the terms of like these characters believe themselves to be like sort of maybe girls at this time period. Like it's 2004 and they don't really have language for anything, but Mac, the narrator, actually is like going through some gender feels. Is non-binary, I think, ultimately in their adulthood, but doesn't have the language for this and is navigating it without any models or anything to turn to, really. So, really it's this sort of non-binary trans masc situation, but it's very subtle in the text of the book. It's sort of just seen through Mac's questions around like, well, what if I could be this person's boyfriend? Or what does it mean to maybe be like a not girl on this girls' high school basketball team? So those questions are subtly explored throughout. And then to address the sports romance bit, it has romance in it, but genre-wise, it's not, like, I wouldn't call it a romance novel just because those...
Oh, no.
Yeah. But I'm talking this through just because I've had this question so much, and a lot of readers have come in, and this isn't to negate romance novels. Like, I love romance novels, but readers have come in with the expectation that this will be a romance novel, which means it has like the expectation of a happy ending and like these people get together, those sort of genre
Mhm.
expectations. And I would hate for anyone to have that expectation going in, because it's much more complicated than that. But it does center a complicated, intense sort of more than friendship that these teammates are going through.
Yeah. And so to that end, and I have a few questions here about basketball, but to your point there, in terms of not being a rom-com, this is a book that looks at how first love can turn on you, right?
Mm,
And in one regard, that's basketball for Mac, right?
absolutely. I really love this question. Thank you so much for asking it. Because for Mac, their first love is basketball. I think first and foremost, the first thing they fell in love with, sort of the most profound love. And then there comes Liv, this person who is amazing at basketball, who they're now playing with. And the love of basketball and love of this person get intertwined. And it's basically like, what could ever compare to something this intense and amazing, like combining these first sort of loves. But in that same way, you can always lose basketball, or you could get hurt, or you could have a terrible coach, or like you said, it can sort of turn on you in ways that are out of your control. You could get cut from the team, you could get kicked off a team.
Mm.
There's so many things. um, you could just have a terrible season, or you could step out on the court and have a million turnovers and be ashamed and just want to shrivel up inside. So it is very interesting as a setting that is sort of based in love, but then can turn dark or be a source of turmoil as well.
It seems like such an excellent place to basketball as a not necessarily a place, but an environment to explore channeling emotions and desire and what you're talking about, even like rejection. Talk more about that.
Absolutely. I feel like sometimes sports get a bad rap as far as maybe not being literary enough. Quote, in the publishing world, there's like this idea maybe that like sports aren't a worthy maybe avenue to explore questions about humanity. Whereas, like you said, I think it's the most intense and beautiful place to explore questions that feel universal. So even if you know nothing about basketball or any sport, replace basketball with anything anybody's ever been obsessed with and that they've pursued to the point of pain and ambition and forming your entire identity around it. Like, Mac is a basketball player and they are tunnel visioned. Like, this is who I am. I am someone who plays basketball. They're not able to sort of form this entire identity outside of it, at least at the start of the book. Um, and it's like basketball could be replaced with art, dance, painting, whatever, anything that someone has thrown themselves into. But anything, having that sort of environment allows you to ask all of these questions that I think trouble all of us. What does it mean to build your identity? How do we build our identity? What do we want our legacy to be? What do we want to leave behind? What do we want people to remember about us? Um, how, for this book specifically, how do you navigate queer desire on the court next to somebody who you are in love with? How do you focus on playing when this person is here? What does it mean to have incredible chemistry with this person on the court and be unable to really communicate off the court, at least in the way that you want to? So it's this place that's rich with questions to be asked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was reading in Bomb magazine, you were pretty clear that you said that you want the reader to feel and understand that the game of basketball is sex.
Yeah.
Explain.
um yeah, it's just
Not to put you
it
on the spot, to quote
totally,
your
no,
words back at you.
it's so erotic. And I wanted to expand the idea of what a sex scene can even look like, as far as it doesn't have to have just a conventional idea of what we're considering people having sex to look like. That a sex scene can be these two people playing one-on-one, and just like sweating all over each other and hands pestering each other's hips, like their hips press against each other. Like it's just such a erotic and physical experience. And I don't think it's limited to basketball, that, you know, this eroticism extends to other sports as well. And I think it's the physical combined with this heightened intensity that you're operating under when you're doing it, to compete, to sort of lose yourself in the moment. It feels so sensual to me. I think sports can bring us to this sort of predated primitive, like pre-language primitive space. It can sort of take us back, how do I say this? Like strip us down to a primitive sort of innate form of who we are.
Yeah.
Like get rid of the masks or like the performances. Like when you step on a quarter field, you become sort of who you truly are inside. And I think that that can also emulate erotic scenes and sex scenes where people can be stripped down to sort of a more vulnerable, exposed version of themselves. And the difference is on the court, there's people watching you.
Yeah.
So there's like that element too. You're like in public and sort of performing, and people are witnessing this vulnerability.
Absolutely. We're here with Mac Crane, whose new novel, A Sharp Endless Need, came out this week. Mac, basketball is so visual, which makes it so fun to watch. How do you go about capturing that movement and that visualness as you're writing it?
That was really difficult. I had to slow down in writing those scenes so much to make sure that I was giving like stage directions almost.
Right?
I didn't want to linger too much in like where is every single person's body and hand and da da da, but I did need to think so visually as like where are all these bodies on the court, and am I at least explaining enough to make it feel fluid and that we can get the gist of sort of where they are and what's happening. But on top of that, I didn't just want to show mechanically what's happening, but it was important for me to really dig into Mac's interiority as well while these basketball scenes are happening, because for me, the joys and the interest in writing basketball is seeing Mac's desires and feelings while they're playing, and sort of bringing those together helps those scenes really sing. Like you can ground the people in the physical, but also sort of lift them up to this higher space of like, I don't know, it's almost like transformative, like what's happening for Mac out there on the court. So sort of blending that interiority and the physicality was really important to me.
Absolutely. Switching gears, I want to come back to what you were talking about earlier in the description of the book. So it's 2004, and there's a point in the story points where Mac is starting to realize that they don't necessarily think of themselves as a girl, and it would be just so much easier to be a boy and girl with Liv, right, and have that sort of heterosexuality. But then it's sort of like deeper than that. It's not just about the relationship to Liv, but there's no model to really understand what's happening. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it was interesting for me to write that time because, number one, I grew up in that time and I know what it feels like to sort of be in that strange space. And I think a lot of it was connected to internet and our access to sort of, we're on the like brink of social media in this time too, right? Like there was AOL Instant Messenger, and there
I was
was
going
like,
to say that was our social media.
yeah. And then there was like Ask Jeeves, and
Oh my God.
it was like that time period of like, am
That
I
was our
gay?
AI.
Yeah, like am I gay? Like type am I gay quiz, like typing it in online. But it was also just like the only gay famous people I knew. I'm like, Helen DeGeneres is on TV, like whatever. I barely even had queer sort of even just like I hesitate to say models, but you know, just the fact of these people's existences. And like Lance Bass from NSYNC, like I was just like, these are the queer people I've heard of. And like one person from like Real World Road Rules, like So I really just had no idea that you could be anything but a boy or a girl, because already I was just like, what is, I barely understand how I could be queer, like, in this world. Um, so I find it interesting to try to find your own identity and find who you are when in the absence of language. Now we have so many words, and of course there's different challenges growing up now that I can't even pretend to, be able to emulate on the page. But now there's so much language. It's almost too much as far as, sometimes these labels and everything. A lot of people feel they're empowering, and that's great. And some people, feel overwhelmed, da da da. But when there was just nothing, or at least where I lived and what I had access to, obviously, San Francisco and these different places that were so queer friendly, like they had words for, being gender fluid and gender nonconforming and gender queer and trans and all that good stuff. But I had never heard of anything like this. I was just on AOL and secret like chat rooms, or it was like lesbian chat rooms or whatever. And it was just like, who are these people I'm talking to?
I'm laughing out of. Did you have dedicated AOL? Because where I was, we were getting like the free 120-hour disc. So I would have AOL for like 120 hours and then have to wait for 6 months for a disc to come back. Yeah, that was mid late 90s.
Oh no! Oh my god! Yeah, no, I had full access.
That's
wow. That's
imagine not having today, like having internet for 120 hours and then not having it again for 6 months. It was crazy. I have to take a break here. We're going to talk more with Mac Crane about their new novel, A Sharp Endless Need. More when we come back. You are listening to The Gaily Show. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I'm your host, John Parker. It's about 9 minutes before the top of the hour. Mac Crane's newest novel, A Sharp Endless Need, came out just this week. Mac was an American Short Fiction Merit Fellow and a Sewanee Writing Conference Fellow. Their work has appeared in Prairie Schooner, Tri-Quarterly, and Lit Hub. We were talking before the break about, bonding over AOL Instant Messenger and, AOL chat rooms and all of that. And it's funny how, like, I forget sometimes that period of how, like, claustrophobic it was back then. I mean, obviously, in therapy, I deal with a lot of that. But when you, like, watch an episode of, like, Seinfeld or Friends or something, and you're like, oh, really? Oh, so what was it? I guess my question where I'm headed with that is, talk to me about sort of having to steep yourself in that time period again, and that sort of, I'm coming with the word claustrophobia. I don't know if that's how you would, like, describe that time period where there's just little tiny bits and pieces, here and there. But 2004 was also the constitutional amendments everywhere where they were, banning gay marriage. I mean, it was it was a particularly toxic year.
Oh yeah. It really brought up a lot to try to throw myself back into that time, and especially like growing up in Pennsylvania and where everyone was like, yay Bush and yay being conservative. It was, I do tend to sort of like block out my childhood a bit. So to steep myself in all of it for an extended period of time while I was writing it, it was just like, oh yeah, okay. And really also just like my home to like the specifics of regionally, just like hanging out in parking lots, and like that was like what we did growing up. Like there was really nothing to do, so it was just like let's drink in parking lots, or like go smoke a cigarette in a parking lot, which would take like 2 minutes. Like we'd be like, oh, we have nothing to do tonight, should we just go smoke in the parking lot? But I was like, this activity didn't take very long, like I guess we could just chain smoke, and be like, all right, let's go to McDonald's, get a milkshake, and then go sit somewhere. That was all sort of funny to like look back on, and like my friends would just light tennis balls on fire and like juggle them with their feet. Like, I mean, yeah, it was really a whole thing. But yeah, to answer your question, like, yeah, I do think like claustrophobic is a good word for how it feels when like your world is so small because of that lack of access to sort of the greater world around you. Like now you can sit online and access anything and basically anyone, and that has its own toxicities and harms. But feeling sort of trapped, like where you're from, and trapped in also the lack of knowledge, I think. It was just like there was a hopelessness to my teen years that I captured in Mac and also wanted to juxtapose against. Mac could only imagine a future where basketball is what's sort of getting them there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like the engine, because Mac was like, otherwise I can't really see a future for myself that feels true and honest. And I don't know how to get out of this place, but I know that I'm great at basketball and I can use it to get to a college and go somewhere else where I can just imagine a different future. And that's sort of what's pulling them through this book. And like, although they engage in a lot of self-destruction, there still is a little bit level of like, okay, let me get out. I have some hope surrounding using basketball that way, which makes it all the more terrible that basketball can turn on you.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the thing that you're relying on for not just like a career or an athletic future, but just a future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're here with Mac Crane, whose new novel, A Sharp Endless Need, came out this week. You're talking about Mac's relationship to basketball. How did their relationship with Liv navigate that sense of future for themselves?
I think it's really complicated because as much as Mac wants Liv and loves Liv, or at least believes they do, with sort of the limited scope of like what we think we know about love, when we're 17, I think they know that Liv can't be a part of their future. Like, I think that they know that even from very early on, and it doesn't stop the desires and the yearning and the intensity and the still sort of delusional fantasy that they're still participating in. But I think because, Liv has this really religious conservative mother. Liv is going through her own stuff. She's performing like perfect, pretty makeup straight girl daughter for her mom. So they have their own elements going on, and Mac can see that. And I think Mac has this like tiny shred of hope of, oh, maybe we can get over this. But I think really, truly knows Liv's not going to be at that future or arrive there with Mac. And that's complicated and hard. But they're sort of sitting with that by the time we get near an end.
Mm. It's that's something I don't miss either. And sometimes it's
No.
hard to put myself back in that like mindset of even like being in writing workshops. So like write something about high school, and immediately I'm like, no,
absolutely not.
So yeah, particularly like 90s, I'm like, nah, I'm good. Can I have another prompt, please? But
Truly.
Thank you, Mac, for joining me today. This has been such a treat for us.
Thanks so much, John. It was great to see you again.
Likewise. The novel is A Sharp Endless Need. We've included a link in our show notes and on this episode's webpage on our website for you to purchase your very own copy. So you can go to am950radio.com or just look in the show notes if you're listening on a podcast player right now. Connect with Mac at their website, marissacrane.org. They are on Blue Sky, mcrane12.bsky.social. Please, Blue Sky, help us make those handles easier. Also, they're on Instagram at Marissa_Crane. Thanks everyone for listening and or watching today. You can keep the gay going all weekend long. Tomorrow afternoon is Pride on AM 950. Twin Cities Amplified is on at 3. The Illegal Trans Woman at 4. The Downright Upright Show with Philip Anthony at 5 p.m. On Sunday at 11 a.m., tune into WCPT for Out Chicago. It's Sunday brunch with your gay best friends, Ellen and Scott. Right now, it's the Matt McNeil Show. Until Monday, keep it queer, America.